welcome back to Tallboy Radio. And if you recognise the voice, it's me, it's Gaz. I'm in the driving seat for this episode. It's been a while since I've been in the driving seat. So without further ado, I'm just going to let my two co-hosts introduce themselves and let everybody know what they're drinking for tonight. So Ad, do you want to say hello and tell us what you're drinking?
Yeah, hello, good to be back. Nice for it just to be the three of us, actually, because that's the other thing. It's not been for a while, just the three of us. It's a song in there somewhere, I think. And tonight I am drinking a Brewdog beer, which is a collaboration they've done with Cloudwater. And it's a New England IPA, and I tell you what, it is an absolute humdinger of an ale. 6.8%, nice and cloudy, soothing on this throat, which you can probably hear. I'm suffering from laryngitis a little bit. But yeah, I tell you what, this is an absolute belter.
Superb, can't fault you. Andy, say hello and what are you drinking?
Hello, I am on the Golden Drac quadruple. It's a nice 10.5%. I also had a sore throat over the weekend and stuff, so this is just a little soother for that.
Beautiful. I am drinking a good old TBR favourite of Leffe, and again, similar to Adam actually this week, as always, out of official TBR podcast merch. So I know we've got a couple of shout outs just before we get into the main sort of content of the show. So I'm just going to pass over to Ad first, and then I'll do my shout outs in a bit. So Ad, do you want to give your shout outs?
Yeah, the first one is a charitable shout out that I said I was going to do. I actually said I was going to do it last week and then I forgot, so I apologise for that one, Gareth. Yeah, it's a dude called Elite Gareth F on Twitter, Gareth Ford. I think you follow him as well, don't you, Gaz?
Yeah.
He's raising some money for his, well, not actually for his kids, but for other children who have the same condition as his children. So he's got a GoFundMe page at the moment where you can just donate to, and he's going to be doing a 24-hour live darts event at some point in the very, very near future. So I know he's going to be delighted to hear some of the lockdown lifting that's going to be done, make his life a little bit easier. So if you can help him out with any of those things at all, please do so. Get in touch with him at Elite Gareth F on Twitter. His GoFundMe page is pinned and his first tweet there at the top. So if you can donate, or if you can just send him something that he can use as a giveaway to get a little bit of attention. We've sent him some stuff down from the Tallboy Radio. So yeah, his children, his daughter has Wiedemann-Steiner syndrome, and his little lad, who is, I think, he's about 2 years old, he's about the same age as Jacob, my little lad, and he has plagiocephaly. I apologise if that is not pronounced correctly, but it's flathead syndrome. Now, he's had the treatment for it where the child has to wear a helmet, which is not funded by the NHS, so it's something that you have to pay for. And I think the treatment is around about £2,000. Now, to be fair, he was in the position that he could do that for his son, but £2,000 is a lot of money to be finding. So what he's doing is trying to raise some money so that he can contribute towards people who have to pay for that. You know, the helmet that helps their skull develop properly so that they can have a normal life, which, touch wood, it looks like his lad will.
Echo that. I do follow Gareth on Twitter, so any sort of followers of mine out there willing to donate, just get along to his Twitter feed and have a look at his pinned tweet and donate. Andy, have you got any shout outs? Is there anyone you want to give a shout out to particularly? Or
well, you got the usual suspects, people that retweet us and stuff, but then it's just been good having some guests on the show. So yeah, and all the future ones that are coming up, look forward to it. And next person, please.
I've got a couple of shout outs I'm going to do just before we get into it. Obviously, Scottish Alchemists that loved that sort of last week. Thank you very much again to them who were sort of kind enough to come onto our podcast. Hopefully, we can jump onto your podcast at some point. Just the usual guys. That sort of retweet us, and if you are looking for sort of podcast recommendations, you might get a little bit sick of myself and Ad sort of popping up on the old let's add a comment with the link to TBR Turbo Radio, and if you do, I'll make no apologies for that. Actually, just keep growing the word, guys. The final shout out I've got really before we get into it is to Daz. Darren is one of our sort of regular listeners, and he actually came up with the idea for this podcast. So thanks, Daz. I did ask him whether he wanted to come on and say a few words, but he sort of said he didn't fancy it. He said thank you very much for the opportunity, but no. So yeah, this podcast was sort of born out of a conversation that me and him had, and it's to do with technology, and in particular sort of technology in sport, and that's going to be the sort of premise of the podcast. Is now it's been introduced, where do we see it going? How do we see sport being changed? Has technology been introduced for the benefit of the sport, or is it detrimental to the sport? I'm going to talk sort of a little bit about the sports that I'm personally interested in and I play. Again, I'm going to talk to Adam and Andy about sort of their ideas. So for me, technology is here. It has been used to influence sport. Are we ever going to get to a point where technology is now not used? No, I don't think so. So it's really sort of exploring where do we go, and we might go down the route of the moral aspect of it, and if technology is available to one person more than somebody else, does that make it fair, and all of that sort of stuff. But I'm just gonna sort of throw it out there. The first question, as I always do when I host, and the first question I suppose is to both of them, although I'll let Adam go first. Give me an example then where you feel as though technology has been beneficial or is advantageous in a particular sport. What are your thoughts initially?
Yeah, when you said this, I've got to be honest. There's a couple of sports which I follow, which technology is heavily involved with, like especially like the American sports. But the ones that really jumped out at me, where it's hugely involved, is something I watch literally for 2 weeks every year, and that's Wimbledon. I'm not a big tennis fan, but we're British, so we are, I believe, legally obliged to watch Wimbledon for 2 weeks out of the summer every year. And I think is it called Hawkeye?
Hawkeye, yeah.
Yeah, Hawkeye,
yeah.
And that. Now, that for me is something that doesn't seem to impact the game. It doesn't slow it down. When they do need to go for a judgment call, the crowd get behind it, sort of start cheering while they're watching, the recreation of what looks like it's been done on a ZX Spectrum. And, and they do that, and everybody gets involved and gets behind it. And you don't hear really of many. The only time you ever hear about an error about it is when the actual machine itself is not functioning, and it goes back to the line judges and the umpire and the different judgment calls. So that was the first one I thought of. And the other one is not something that interests me in the slightest. In fact, it's a sport I completely abhor. But I know you're a big fan of it, Gaz, and that's horse racing. It's something I don't suppose you really think about it, but that one is huge in terms of determining winners in so many races, where the bookies have got a few odds on it as well. They stand to make and win on, and it's largely based on what that technology tells them, because sometimes you see it's inseparable.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and yes, I like a flutter every now and then, and the horses, and obviously the technology in terms of your photo finishes and that sort of stuff. And back in the day, before you had the photo finish, how did you call it and stuff? So, and obviously, fortunes were made and lost effectively on those calls, sort of thing. So yeah, that's what I mean. The Hawkeye, it's interesting you mentioned that, because do you know when Hawkeye? You might have done your research now. Do you know when Hawkeye was first introduced?
I don't, unless you're talking about the Marvel superheroes.
Why do you know that instead?
No, I don't know that.
So Phil on both caps. Basically, Hawkeye was first introduced in March 2006, and it was in the NASDAQ 100 tournament, which was held in Miami. So 2006, and then later that year, the US Open was the first effectively major to have Hawkeye technology. And for those of you that don't know about Hawkeye technology, it's basically a ball tracking software, and they use it to determine whether the ball is in or out, and they zoom in, and if there's a fragment of the ball that touches the line, it's in. If there's if no fragment of the ball touches the line, it's out. And I think they use similar technology in goal line technology and football and stuff. So yeah, okay. So they were your first two then. So quick question then: do you feel as though Hawkeye has been advantageous to tennis then?
I mean, I would say so. like again, I apologise if anybody's listening out there and you disagree, but I'm not a huge tennis fan. But whenever I've seen it, especially when you look at the game now compared to what it was like with the old wooden rackets, the older technology with the balls and everything that they used, the speed, especially that men's game is played. I mean, that serve, well, it's served sometimes upwards of 130 miles an hour.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
It's ridiculous. The human eye, when it's something as fine as whether it's just touching the line or not, it's so difficult to determine. And you've got that audible beep that tells the umpire and gives him that information, and then it's disputed. And that, for me, I just think it adds to the game. It adds to the character and the charisma behind. The likes of you imagine the likes of John McEnroe. It would have affected his game. Much more.
Absolutely, yeah.
I didn't realise it was as late as 2006. Actually, I thought it would have been earlier. That's quite interesting.
I think they had the service line where you would get the beep. So effectively, you would get the beep, and so I think that predated 2006. But in terms of actually Hawkeye, in terms of the ball tracking, and they use it for line calls and baseline calls as opposed to just a service box, because you used to have like a. It was a box that had a telescopic lens, and it was like a sensor. And obviously, if the ball then hit that, it would beep, and if it didn't, it wouldn't. Type thing.
So I certainly know with John McEnroe, a lot of his games were beeped, but I think that was another matter.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that might have been his here all week. But I think in terms of Hawkeye, the actual ball tracking technology where you could. You could query or question a call. I think so. Obviously, 2006 was the first time. Right, so I'm going to come to you then, Andy. You've listened to Ad, who mentioned sort of tennis and effectively horse racing. So, what was the sport that you thought that sort of technology had an advantageous impact on?
So one of them I keep thinking of is snooker. Like when they're going to do like a tough shot, obviously they show the lines and they show where all the balls can go.
Yeah.
If someone's fouled, they can say, "Oh, the ball was there," and they've done it on screens for years, haven't they? But they've made it a more snazzy now, haven't they? Where they like by the millimeter where the ball will go.
Yeah.
So I think that's pretty good. There's no like if ups maybe. It's just like this is where the balls were. This is that's it. Like, there's no arguments and stuff.
And I remember going back on, snooker, you go back a few years and it'd be like, well, actually somebody say, well, no, the ball was there and you saw the refs rolling it, but no, it's there. Well, actually now all effectively you just use the technology, you go back to where it was and you say, well, actually, no. And they effectively, they superimpose and they go, well, actually, no, it's not there, it's there. And it's almost done. And interestingly, and I'm going to get onto this question in a moment. The sports that we've just looked at there, effectively you've got tennis, horse racing to a lesser degree, actually, but tennis and snooker, they're very stop-start sports anyway. There are natural gaps in that game, effectively. So tennis, obviously, at the end of the point, they're going to towel off, or they bounce the ball and get ready to serve again. So the delay and the use of technology doesn't seem as it affects that sport as much. Whereas, and we're going to get onto this obviously in a moment, whereas perhaps the technologies where the games are more free-flowing and constant, I suppose you come into the question of, I'm going to throw the elephant in the room. So VAR in football, for example, is when do you stop the play? When do you carry on? Football is a very constant game, effectively. So we're going to get onto that. The one for me, which we taught was, I grew up playing cricket loads, and cricket was a massive sport of mine through the summer. And obviously, initially you had the third umpire, and they would, is it a run out? Is it not a run out? Effectively, and you would have cameras on the line, and when the bails were hit, is the batsman in? Is he out? And obviously, you never had that. And it's always down to the umpire. So your use of technology there has been dramatic, because actually it's a line call. It's is he in, is he out? There's no the contentious issue. It's line calls. A bit like Hawkeye. Is the ball in? Is the ball out? As a matter of fact, I think the problem comes when, and in particular this is where perhaps the video referee stuff comes in, for when you start taking into account people's personal views on it. That I think that's where the lines become, it's not black and white, it's more of an opinion-based thing, and that's where I think technology doesn't work. I think it has to be very factually based. But going back in terms of sort of technology where I think it has been advantageous, cricket for me was one. Third umpire first used in 1992, I think, Test match South Africa versus India, and that was the first time that was used. And then subsequently, there's been an advancement called DRS, and that was in 2008, and that was where you can get reviews and the players can call for a review because they don't think it's out or they do think it's out, sort of thing. So that for me was a massive impact in technology. Right, I'm going to throw the second question out to you then, guys. When do you feel as though technology has been implemented which is detrimental to the sport, or is has had perhaps a negative impact on the sport, or can you even think of any? I'll throw it over. Andy, do you want to go first if you can think of one? Or
there's one that really jumps out at me, and that you've already mentioned it already, is VAR.
Yeah,
brought in to help with contentious decisions in terms of offside, whether goals should stand, whether fouls were deliberate or not, and really brought in to assist the referee in what is a very difficult game. It should work something as similar. I'm not a big rugby fan, so I apologise if you're going to tell me that this doesn't work. But is it TMO that they have in rugby?
Yeah.
Rugby's a very different game where the players seem to treat the referee with far more respect than probably than we see on a regular Premiership game. Don't get me wrong, there are players out there that aren't too bad, but generally speaking, that guy is held in contempt by the people who are playing the game. You don't see that in rugby, so maybe the decisions are as equally contentious in rugby, but they just deal with it more respectfully. I don't know.
Yeah,
but the examples I've seen, and I think you probably hit the nail a little bit on the head in terms of when you factor in human opinion.
Yeah.
There's some that we've seen, especially like the likes of, was it Mo Salah's penalty, which was clearly a dive.
Yeah.
And it's reviewed and yet still given. And it's like, if this is brought in to improve the game, this is not improving the game, because don't get me wrong, I'm an Arsenal fan, so I know our players dive as much as the net. Well, not as much as bloody Liverpool, but as much as just about every other team that play the game. And it's frustrating. It's the worst part of the game, isn't it? It is cheating. I'd like to see it stopped. And I thought VAR, if done properly, would bring an end to it, and it's not, and it's the most frustrating thing. What it does is actually it backs up the decisions that have been made in the lights. Like
I think VAR creates more issues. It creates more problems than it solves. Andy, I know you when we were sort of tweeting on our sort of WhatsApp group and stuff, you mentioned VAR. So go on, what are your thoughts on VAR? I mean, would that be something that you feel as though technology has had a negative impact? Is that one that you would pick?
Yeah, I mean, the way I see it though is, you both said the human error side of it. There's no like for offside, for example, they say, is it your top of your sleeve, your bottom of your sleeve, and that's a bit silly. But I always feel like all the governing bodies like UEFA, FIFA, whoever, FA, they all want to like say, oh, the referee's in charge. It's like, well, that's fine, but these are supposed to be tools that aid him.
Yeah.
But they seem to be like he'll give someone, say someone's been offside and then they scored a goal. He might say, well, yeah, that's a goal, we'll carry on. And that's when the VAR people say, oh, it looks a bit off that, let me have a quick look. And then say, yeah, he's offside. He doesn't need to run over to the screen and have a look himself. It should be like, it's clear offside or whatever. Yeah. Done. But it just feels like they're trying to, promote the fact that the referee's in charge. It's like the tools to help, not tools to, be like old school and say, oh no, let the referee decide on it and stuff. It should be cut and clear quite a lot of decisions.
You could do a whole podcast itself on sort of VAR and football and stuff, and the contentious issues that we've got. And for me, part of football, growing up and playing it, as a kid and stuff, and then playing it, not a brilliant standard, but playing pub football on a Saturday and a Sunday and stuff. Part of it was, the ref is in the middle and he's the one that makes the decisions. And I take your point, Ad. Yeah, footballers don't treat the refs with the respect they deserve, and rugby is an absolute shining example of, you've got these 6'8", 6'9", absolute hulking blokes that are quite physically intimidating, and then you've got a 5'9", 5'10" referee in the middle, and effectively they're calling him sir, and the referee is laying the law down to them, and there's no back chat, there's no lip. They accept the decisions, So I think football can learn a lot from that.
Discipline. It's discipline, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. But part of football and professional football and was talking about it on a Saturday night, and it's almost like we're talking about VAR instead of talking about the game itself. It's like, oh, well, VAR got that wrong. VAR got that wrong. And I take your point, Andy. It should be. It was brought in to rectify a, quote, clear and obvious error. That was what VAR was brought in for. Not to then people watch the VAR replay, then go to the referee in the earphone and then say, we can't make up our mind. You need to go and have a look at it on the monitor. Well, what's the point of having the VAR guys there? Why not just give them the monitor and go, well, go and have a look? Yeah. Why is VAR there? And then initially it was taking 3, 4, 5 minutes to make a decision. And that's okay in American football, which we'll get onto in a minute in terms of the technology. That's okay because that's a stop-start game anyway. That's okay in cricket because actually it's a stop-start game. You get the end of the over, whereas football, 4, 5, 6 minutes to make a decision. It's like, really? That can affect the whole impetus of the game, the whole momentum of the game and all sorts of stuff like that. So for me, I absolutely agree actually with both of you. And the one that I felt as though has been introduced, I think initially for the right reasons, although it's been implemented wrongly, is VAR. And actually, I don't think it's helping at all. I think it's creating more problems and more issues than it's actually solving. Yeah. I take a little bit of, in terms of the line decision. So, yes, Hawkeye's in goal line technology to be brought in. Is the ball over the line? Is it not? That's a black or white. That's a yes or no. I completely agree that goal line technology should be in there. I think the offside, if they get the laws of the game right, I think VAR could be used in the right way. It's just they need to decide, is it a shoulder, is it an elbow, is it a toe, is it a whatever. And so I think they can get that right because ultimately it's a factual decision. Is he offside? Is he not offside? So it should be black and white. The problem comes to me is when you interpret, is it a foul, is it not a foul? Is it, is it a yellow card, is it a red card? Because actually the guy in the middle makes one decision and he views it in one way. You've got the people at Stockley Park who are the VAR guys looking at it in another way. And yet they're interpreting it in a different way than the guy on the field. So that's a matter of opinion is it a yellow, is it a red, is it a foul, is it not a foul? So I don't know where we're going with it. The problem that I've got is the game I love, which is football. It's pretty much here to stay, I think. I mean, can you see a point in the future where they say, well, actually, we're not going to have VAR at all?
I can't because, it takes a brave individual to back down and say, look, this just is not working. Like you say, there's bits of it that can be refined. Certainly the goal line technology to see if a goal is a goal, whether the ball's over. Because there's been some shockers over the years. You can think of them where the ball's clearly over the line.
Well, there's a famous one for World Cup, and obviously Lampard, was it Germany, whatever? Was it Germany? And then we lose. Was it 2-1 down or something? Lampard hit the shot from outside the box, hit the underside of the bar, and was clearly over. And I mean, clearly like a yard over the line. And obviously it wasn't given then. Was it Germany went on to win that game or whatever in the World Cup and knock us out, whatever. So
I thought you were going to mention another game involving England and Germany in 1966 where there was questions about whether a ball was over or not.
No, I'm not bothered about that because we got to win the World Cup, so that's fine. But yeah, no, absolutely. And when you look at in that instance, that potentially was a decision and that obviously would have impacted a World Cup final, for God's sake. I mean, interestingly, when we talk about VAR and they're talking about the sort of video referral system, one of the things, and it's Sepp Blatter that I had quite a lot of, he was very anti-technology, and obviously he then got booted out, and I think it was Gianni Infantani that came in, and it was actually through the Thierry Henry handball, and I don't know whether you remember it when he was playing for France and he played against Ireland.
Didn't see it.
And you didn't see it, no?
No, I'm pretty sure it didn't happen. I think you're making this one up.
And basically, that was one of the major contentious decisions that was basically the argument for bringing in video technology into, because obviously, Thierry Henry handballed, and it was a clear handball, although actually at the time, it really wasn't really picked up. And obviously the match officials didn't pick it up. And it was only after about 3 or 4 replays you thought, oh, bloody hell, that's a bit, that was handball. And that obviously cost Ireland a place in the World Cup. So
the other famous handball, obviously, again involving England and Argentina, was Maradona's. Maradona is lauded everywhere in the world as a fantastic footballer. Over here, he's branded a cheat and is probably not recognised fully for his ability because of that.
Yeah, and obviously, he obviously recently passed and stuff, and I do appreciate him as a footballer. I hated him for what he did to England in that World Cup, and I remember it. I remember it, but. Yeah. To be fair, his second goal was pretty decent, really.
Shilton's still quite bitter about it, isn't
he? He picked up the ball on the halfway line and then went past 3 or 4 England players, and he put, I think, Terry Butcher on his arse when he went past him and put Shilton on his arse and blah, blah, blah. So, that was a decent goal. I'll give him that. But, absolutely, that contentious handball, the hand of God and all that was... that'd have been picked up, wouldn't it? So, and they're the reasons why VAR was brought in. To rectify clear and obvious errors, effectively. So I think we're all agreeing on that. Actually, VAR, in our opinion, is not the best use of technology.
We all agree there's a need for it. There's definitely a need for it, but it's just been applied badly.
So, yes, so therefore, is the use of technology advantageous? It's just how you implement that and how it molds to the game, I suppose. Like I said, I'm trying to think of another game that is free flowing. That you see, even rugby is a little bit more stop-start than football because you get your scrums, you get your line-outs, and so it's a little bit more stop-start. So actually, the stopping of rugby isn't as significant as the stopping of football. And I'm trying to think of a game that is completely free flowing where you stop it all the time. I mean, obviously, we're all big American football fans, and that is a stop-start game, but it almost lends itself to the use of technology. You've got your big screen TVs, and you've got your crowd in there, and you've got your replays and all of that sort of stuff. So I do worry where football is going and the use of VAR. But getting back to then sort of technology, and I'm going to mention another game that I play a lot, and it's more to do with the equipment that you use. And I'm going to mention golf because technology's had a massive impact on golf. And I know you two guys don't really play it, but if you sort of...
You've never seen me play crazy golf.
There is that. That if you play crazy golf like you swing a normal golf club, then God help us. It's like a dying octopus the way he swings a golf club. It's horrendous. Sorry, Adam, if you can watch on YouTube, I was just having a choking fit here now. So for me, years ago, part of one of my favourite golfers growing up was Seve Ballesteros, and he was brilliant. Spanish hands. He was a magician with the shots he could play and the shot making he could make. And it's one of the reasons that Daz came up with the sort of concept of the podcast, because he plays golf, and nowadays the technology they use with the golf clubs in terms of the drivers and the variable phase technology and the technology around the golf balls, they're going so much further, and these guys are hitting the golf balls so much further, and that they don't even have to be that good because the technology on the golf club now is such that actually you don't really need to hit it out the middle and it'll still go pretty much where you want it to go. So it's sort of de-skilling the sport a little bit, and a lot of the golfers, and I suppose Tiger Woods was one of the first guys, he got in the gym and he bulked up, and he was one of the first guys that sort of changed the sport as such. And these guys are hitting it as far as they can, and they don't really care where it goes, because all the hazards, again, excuse my, all the bunkers, all the hazards that were in play, they're now irrelevant because those bunkers were put at 240 yards, 250 yards. Well, these guys are in at 350 yards. So for them, it doesn't matter where they hit it with the bunker, they just bloody hit the ball as far as they can. So technology's had a massive impact on that. And there is talk now with USGA and the RNA, which are golf people, about actually dialing back the technology. So they're talking about restricting the technology on golf balls and golf club technology to try and actually take it back to what it used to be like 10, 15, 20 years ago, just because players are getting much fitter, stronger, hitting the ball a lot further. So therefore the game's becoming easier with technology sort of thing. So So maybe that's a case where technology was brought in, and I get it, but has it been advantageous to the game? You could argue people like Jack Nicklaus, people like Sevi, were they any? Sorry, Andy, what did you say?
Happy Gilmore.
Happy Gilmore. In fact, absolute left-hand turn. Did you see the post that Adam Sandler did on Twitter? I don't know whether you've seen it or not. He tweeted something and he basically recreated it. Happy Gilmore. So it's brilliant. That was my left turn for this part. But yeah, so people like that are just, were they any less skillful? No. Would they hack it these days? Probably not. Can the golfers from today use the clubs that Jack Nicklaus used, Sevi used, Lee Trevino used, Arnold Palmer used? No, probably not. And that, so therefore the technology is having an impact on how you play the game, and it's making it probably a bit easier. So I think there's elements of, yes, we need to be aware of technology, but we have to be careful that it doesn't take it so far that it de-skills the game, if you know what I mean. If you get to a point in snooker, for example, where, you always get like a laser eye, you can go, well, actually, okay, well, that's going to go there and that's going to go there. And do you know what I mean? And almost, where does it stop? Where does technology stop? And I suppose that's one of my questions is, we pick the sports that we just spoke about. In 10 years' time, and I haven't asked you this question before, so there was no homework involved in this, but in 10 years' time, where do you see football in terms of the use of technology and what is currently VAR, but where do you see it going? Will there even be a referee on the pitch?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, I can't see a game where there isn't a referee there. But ultimately, if technology works successfully, then why would you need one? I guess other than to interfere with scuffles and what have you.
Physical presence.
That's it. Yeah, that's it. But maybe if it was done entirely by technology, you'd like to think in 10 years' time it would be entirely working within the game.
Yeah.
But I mean, you're talking about golf there and how it's revolutionized that, but it's the same in football in terms of sport psychology and sports science that goes on behind and getting athletes. If you look at the level of fitness now to these guys that are playing, that's done a lot of it is around about technology and body mass indexing and stuff like that. Yeah. Something that probably Tony Adams and Paul Merson would have been unfamiliar with back in the day.
The only masses they were worried about was the mass of the beer and the ABV that they could chuck down the necks at whatever time it was. But
exactly, yeah.
It reminded me of The Last Dance with Michael Jordan. He wore a pair of boots when he was playing for like the Washington Wizards, I think it was. He wore like his original Jordans from like the 70s or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And he turned around saying his feet were bleeding and they're aching because they're all like heavier and they were proper leather and stuff like that. So instead of being always like plastic and rubber and all that, it's always like dead heavy leather or harder plastic and stuff like that. It's quite interesting to see how he was saying it's changed quite a lot. And football boots are the same, where they were leather and now they're all like, I don't even know what they are, like polymer as well.
Polymer or acrylic, whatever.
The Converse Chuck T's, you know what I mean? They were originally designed for playing baseball. It's like, wow. Yeah. Those things that, I love them, but gee whiz, they ain't comfortable.
And you look at, I say basketball, and obviously Andy's just mentioned to the Last Dance and stuff, and obviously I'm a massive Chicago Bulls fan, so I love the Last Dance and Phil Jackson and Scottie Pippen and Michael Jordan and all those guys. They're brilliant. But the technology in terms of even the gym and the floor, the actual the materials they use in actually laying the foundations of the floor, and the materials they use in the shoes, and even to the extent of the clothing and the vests that they wear, in terms of they're now breathable, they have various technology in them, and so on and so forth. And you look at athletes, and you look at 100-meter runners and 200-meter runners, and are we running any faster than, and I know he's got the world record, but let's say somebody like, Usain Bolt, did he run any faster than Jesse Owens? Well, yeah, because he holds the world record and Jesse Owens doesn't. But if Jesse Owens was running on the type of track that Usain Bolt does, and had the available technology in terms of the shoes that Usain Bolt has, and the technology in terms of the dietitians and everything else, would Jesse Owens not have run as fast as Usain Bolt? And it's that sort of, and it's hard to compare eras, but has the impact of technology meant that we get a slightly diluted version of the sports that we really enjoy because actually it's having a huge impact on the individuals? Are the individuals that play sport now as skilled as the individuals that played the sport 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago? Or is it just the fact that they can now play it because of the technology that's involved in the game? I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Basketball's a good example of that, where, say, like in Jordan's era, you could not punch people, but you're running into everyone. You're getting the ball and you're like body checking and stuff like that. Whereas now, you're not really allowed to touch anyone. You can charge into them and stuff like that. But so now you're seeing players scoring, 50, 60 points a game, like quite regularly. And that was already, back in the day, that was just Jordan doing that.
Yeah.
And now it's like good 4 or 5 people doing it.
Yeah.
Just getting the ball, bang, shooting it.
Is that because of the change in how the laws of the game are interpreted, or is that because the players have got fitter, bigger, faster, stronger? I don't know.
Yeah, it's probably a mixture. I mean, like Jordan smoked cigars like a chimney, didn't he? Like after shut off or even before a game, he's there like big chuffing away.
You see, it is hard to compare eras, but you look at somebody, and I obviously never saw him play, but somebody that was thought to be one of the world's best, if you excuse the pun, was George Best. And look at some of the football pitches that he played on. Look at some of the tackles that were allowed against him. The guys were jumping at his knees and calves and ankles and stuff. And nowadays, you look at, I don't know who, people are saying, somebody like, I don't know, Harry Kane or Jack Grealish or someone like that. Grealish is playing well at the moment. People like that dribble the ball and can take it past players and stuff. Well, George Best could do that. Are you not telling me that players currently are as good as him? Because look at what he had to play on. And when you look at technology, look at the impact it's had on the equipment, the pitches, the football pitches that they play on, the type of football that they use, the type of boots they're wearing, and all of that sort of thing. So has it made the game better? Has it made the game, I don't know.
For me, it has in terms of making it more entertaining. Certainly in terms of football. Don't get me wrong. You watch the likes of George Best, like I say, when he's getting chopped down by Chopper Harris and still staying on his feet and going on to score. Incredible. And there's, you can pick out a lot of gifted players from that era. And then there was a lot of dirge as well, to be fair. Yeah. The likes of Johnny Henson at Arsenal, God bless him, when you go through the ages. But
dude, he scored goals in the European Cup finals, didn't he?
Yeah, he scored a goal for Arsenal. But when you think about those Man United teams underneath Alex Ferguson, and you think about Wenger's early Arsenal teams, those for me were that was football to watch and behold, and it was that's why it's called a beautiful game, because it was beautiful to watch. Those players were fantastic, and it was entertaining. I'm not saying the games weren't entertaining back in the 70s and 80s, because there's some great games. Yeah. But I think that for me was a golden era of football. You see,
I think it goes back to in a way what Andy said in terms of is it the interpretation of the rules and the slight changing of the rules. I think the Man United under Alex Ferguson, the Arsenal team under Arsene Wenger, it was a beautiful game because there was a balance between skill and not combat but physical contact. I think nowadays it's gone too far the other way, and actually not allowed to even lean on anybody, and it's a free kick. Effectively, I think in 10 years' time, I would hate it, but football will become a non-contact sport. It'll literally be like you can jockey a player and whatever, but you can't tackle him because it's contact, and therefore,
You only have to watch that Liverpool side now, and it's a non-contact sport. They go down anyway.
Well, I won't say anything really controversial. No, go on, I will. There was a game on tonight, and Graham Souness called out one of the players saying he dived. One of the Southampton players, thinking he called him out saying he dived and it was simulation, and therefore was he not cheating? And I was like, well, he wasn't saying that when Everton played Liverpool in the derby, and Mane and Salah were diving all over the place. He did a bit of double standards, that is, and I think a hashtag like just saying sort of thing. But it absolutely take your point and stuff. But I think going back to the Wenger and its whole different podcast, and we're slightly left turning now. But I think it was a beautiful game then because there was a balance between the physical Vieira, Keane confrontation, physical aspect, but you were just starting to get the balance of the beautiful game. Years ago, it was just choppers, and you get the odd guy like George Best. Whereas nowadays, it seems as though the tackling's gone out of the game. Man, you put in the tackle now, and you're like, that's not even a foul, you know.
No. But the technology played its part in that, though, in terms of the ball, the way that it was constructed, the way that the boots are constructed, the pitches that they play on, the dietitians and everything, the prep and the science that went into it, all comes from technology. And that, for me, I just think those two teams are fabulous to watch.
Yeah. Andy?
I was just going to say, like, I think footballers start younger now as well. So, like, George Best was probably, like, 16 or something, and he picked up playing football. And, I'm quite good at this. Whereas now they're like 5 years old, and United, Arsenal, or whoever, Liverpool, everyone's like signing them up, saying, "Oh, they're going to be the next big thing." So they're training earlier and earlier and earlier. So they are. By the time they're like 16, they've been playing for like 10 years.
Yeah,
at a decent level. So that's another aspect. I think they're more about performance, not flair. I think nowadays.
And therefore, you look at the footballers now, and they, underneath their match shirts, obviously they all wear the vests that have gyrometers, accelerometers, and they would look at how far you run, at what speed you run, how far do you turn, how high do you jump, and all of that sort of stuff. And obviously all of that data is analysed to the nth degree. And I sort of get why you do it, because football's becoming a little bit more like NFL in terms of, if we're attacking and the ball is in this segment of the pitch, I want you to be here, and here. If we're defending and the ball is in this third, I want you to be here, and here, sort of thing. So I think it's getting a lot more technical and stuff. And I suppose the technology helps that, because you can analyse, and obviously you've got sports scientists, and you look at dietitians and nutritionists and sports scientists and all of that. And I get that has a massive impact on sport. One I'm going to mention, and it's a sport that, in particular, me and Adam love. Andy has yet to sort of sample it to any great degree, is darts.
Oh, I thought you were say bare knuckle fighting there for a second.
Well, you say that. You haven't seen me in a mixed martial arts octagon. You know what I mean? I could be brilliant. I don't know, because I've never done it, but I don't think I would be brilliant, by the way. But you look at darts, and somebody asked me, they said, how would Gerwyn Price, who's world number one now, I think still world number one, so how would Gerwyn Price get on now if he played Eric Bristow when Eric Bristow was world number one on a board that Eric Bristow threw on? Because the only reason I ask that is because the technology these days is that the wires are razor thin, like literally diamond cut razor thin. So the treble actually looks, and theoretically is, bigger than the treble that Eric Bristow was throwing at. Because you would have the thick circular wires, and you would have the little bolt ends next to it. And when you look at the board, you go back in the 70s and you thought, fudging hell, how would you ever even hit a bloody treble to get one dart in, let alone a 180?
I know.
And the technology in terms of the grips and the flight. So, and again, it's hard to compare, but if Bristow in his heyday was throwing on boards now, he'd be averaging 105, 106, 107 almost every visit he made.
Yeah,
wouldn't he?
Yeah. There's a few of them, the likes of Jockey Wilson as well.
Absolutely.
The players like that. Those old boards, I've got an old board like that in my garage actually, and I use it from time to time. And oh my goodness, the amount of bounce outs I get is absolutely ridiculous. Like you say, the boards now are literally razor wire. If you hit it, it's going in above or below, generally below. I tend to find. But like you say, the machining of the darts now, the level of accuracy. If you jump on Shot Darts' Instagram, and they regularly share their darts getting machined, and their darts, they make a beautiful, very nicely balanced, very unusual grip style. A lot of detail goes into it. But they are done, and they're made exactly the same. And if you weigh them out, there's literally 0.01 of a gram in it. And I would have said, with Eric Bristow back in the day, don't get me wrong, he'd have the best set of darts available. But nothing near.
Well, there'd be variance in it, wouldn't there?
Yeah. Nothing like that you probably throw with now.
You look at the razor wire, and if you were 0.1 of a millimetre off centre in terms of hitting the wire, it would slide down the wire and hit the treble, either treble 20, treble 5, whatever. Whereas back in the day, your wires were so thick, and it'd be like, actually, you've probably got a whole centimetre that if you hit the wire, you literally bounce out. And nowadays, you look at the points and how you knurl the points, and they're designed to slide off the wire and all of that sort of stuff. So you look at that, and just a game that theoretically is and this, don't take this disparagingly, is as simple as darts. Technology's had a massive impact on that. And again, we go back to that. Can you compare different eras? But I'm almost certain that Goo Price, and I'm sorry, Goo, and if you are listening, if you are, by the way, give us a shout out or whatever. But if Goo Price was to play at Bristow back in the 1970s, 80s, Bristow, I think, would spank his ass just because of the technology. Similarly, I think if Bristow played Goo Price now, using the technology that Goo Price has available to him, I think Goo Price would probably beat him. Just because of as you said, the balance of the darts, the way that the dart sits, the way that when it hits the board it reacts, or it hits the wire it reacts, and so on. So it is difficult. Can you ever see a point where, when we talk darts, you look at Michael Van Gerwen, Goo Price, people like that, regularly average over 100. And actually, big shout out, by the way, while we're talking about darts, to Jake Jones. I don't know whether or not you listen, Jake, but if you do, you know what, absolutely phenomenal performance. For those of you that don't know, Jake has managed to secure his PDC tour card for the next 2 years at Q School. I think it was in Milton Keynes. So, Jake, phenomenal performance, brilliant. I watched the final couple of games, bit nerve wracking at the end, but brilliant. Hats off to you. So fair play. But you look at technology, you look at darts, and you look at where it's going. Can you see a point where even, I say, average players are averaging nearly 100, whereas back in the day when Taylor and John Lowe and Jockey Wilson and that lot playing in Bristow, if you averaged 100, that was like, that was like sensational darts.
Yeah, I mean, if you watch it now, I think MVG was one of those who was ahead of the game. He came in at the time when probably Taylor was out on the wane, and he was taking over, and he was hitting those big averages that were just ridiculous. It just seemed unachievable by anybody else. And now he's don't get me wrong, he's still winning tournaments. He's still a fantastic player. But you're seeing players doing very, very similar things all the time. The likes of, say, Peter Wright, who's been around. And you've seen a massive resurgence in him when he won the World Championship last year. But he's been around for many, many years and wasn't doing that. Goodness knows he changed his darts often enough. So, he finally found the right one.
Mid-game in some cases. Yeah. But is that because... So is that because of... And this could be a whole different podcast again, but is that because of sponsorship and prize money and available gains within the game? I.e., people can give up their normal job and can earn money doing it, therefore they dedicate the time to it, therefore they get better? Or is that because of the technology, i.e., the treble is bigger, the darts are better? Or is it a combination of both?
I think it's a combination of both. I think the technology helps, but the money that Sky have pumped into the PDC... with the BDO, you've seen the prizes that the BDO were offering up until
I think don't get me wrong, but I think I read something that actually they've gone bust. They got bankrupt.
Yeah, I'd heard that as well. But the money that they were offering, it wasn't enough to give up your job.
No, and what you would have is very famous darts players effectively. Oh, he's won the News of the World or whatever, he'll be back laying slabs on Monday or whatever, and you're like, literally you talk about them just still doing a normal job.
Yeah, whereas, the World Championship recently, Goo Price, was it $500,000 he won?
Yeah.
I mean, that's an insane amount of money.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong, he deserves it. Fantastic player, and has put in a lot of effort to someone who was at Q School himself, 6-7 years ago, and now world number one and winning that tournament. Fair play to him. But I think a lot of it is the money that Sky pumped into it that allow people that they can practice 8-9 hours a day rather than, like I say, carpet fitting for 8-9 hours a day and playing darts for 2 hours in the pub at night.
And it's also interesting because this goes back to the technology thing. So notice what I've did there. So the increased sponsorship allows the sport to hit a wider audience, which means that the companies that are involved in the development of the darts reach a wider audience, which means that then they can invest more money in the R&D, which means that they can then invest more money, and so on and so on and so on. So, I mean, ultimately, it all comes down to money. But I'm going to ask you, in a way, a bit of a moral question. Does technology, and maybe don't think of at the very elite level. So maybe if you're talking about football, don't think of necessarily Premier League or Championship. I think maybe lower down, so Div 1, Div 2 or Conference or whatever. And if you're talking about golf, don't think PGA Tour. If you're talking about darts, don't necessarily think PDC. Think slightly lower. Does technology create an imbalance in the playing field, if you excuse the pun? So with technology, is it a level playing field? In other words, is the availability of technology for some much more advantageous than others, and therefore is that fair? And is it morally fair in terms of some people might be very wealthy and therefore have access to that technology, and it could be dietitians, nutritionists, etc., whereas other people haven't. And just because the fact that somebody has access to that technology means that they're able to perform better. Is that morally right or not? Or does it matter? Or even should it matter? I don't know. What are your thoughts?
It's quite a big subject, that. With I remember when Cristiano Ronaldo was at Real Madrid, for example, he used to play a game, do his cool down and all that sort of stuff. Then he used to go in a cryo chamber for like however long, them ice baths and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But they were like, I think they were like a couple of grand a go. So he like bought his own, blah, blah, blah. But lower leagues aren't really going to do that. So they're not really going to be at their physical peak or physical standard as, say, the Premier League, for example.
Yeah.
So like Stockport County, for example, they don't have multi-million-pound training ground. They don't have 30, 40 or personal chefs and dietitians, physios. So it does. I think on the one hand, it's not a balanced playing field, but on the other hand, it's something you want to work towards, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, if everyone had like their own dietitians and all that, I'd be like, well, why strive to get to the top? You want to be first. You want to be a winner. You don't want to be. Oh, I've taken part. That's my.
So, and do you think that's why Ronaldo maybe? And if you haven't seen it, by the way, it's a great clip that's been circulating maybe the last week or so. He was playing for Juventus, and it's a super slow mo of him scoring a headed goal, and it's just like poetry in motion. He rises early and like he's literally like head and shoulders above the defender and stuff, and it's an amazing clip. But so it is the fact that he had access to that technology early, or he realised the benefit of that technology early meant that he can stay at the top of his game for longer.
I think the real question there is, though, and Andy highlighted it in terms of the money side of it, in terms of what Ronaldo can afford to do, given his ginormous wages and the money that these clubs create and generate, is the money spoiling the game? Is the money creating the divide? Because it's the money that pays for that technology for those players.
Yes, great. You know what? Great question. Absolutely great question. And actually, that might lead on to a whole different podcast, which is money ruining the sport effectively or influencing sport?
I won't answer my own question there, so we can save it for another episode. But no, but in all seriousness, like Andy says, though, you look at Stockport County, the amount of income that they generate because of the league that they're in, and I'm not highlighting them. They're not a terrible football club. I've got nothing against Stockport County. God bless you. But the stuff that's available to them, because they've not got that Premier League money. You look at the amount of money that Sky again, and I'm not blaming Sky. I pay my subscription fee to Sky, so I'm part of the problem. the amount of money that they have pumped into sports it's obscene, really.
It's paid off for them because obviously they're making money and they're
100%.
profit making.
Yeah.
But obviously, lots of the football clubs are happy because the Sky TV money and the BT Sport money, and now. And actually, interestingly, we could have another conversation about where is this going in terms of the streaming companies. So I know Amazon are trying to get involved in the Premier League, and it won't be long before Facebook get involved, and there's other streaming sites get involved in terms of the Premier League. But it's a great question, and is it actually money and the combination of money maybe and technology that is influencing sport? But just one sort of, I say final question, final thought. When you look at levels of performance, so whether it be athletics and you look at world records being broken, and not necessarily for athletics, but and you look at maybe darts and you look at the number of 100 plus averages, and you look at, as I say, athletics, how fast you can run, you look at golf, how far you can hit it, and winning golf scores and all that sort of stuff. Where do we see that ending? And I'm just going to throw it out to you. 20 years ago, the 100 metres world record was 9.98 seconds or whatever it is. Now it's 9.6 or whatever it is. So you've dropped 0.3, 0.4 of a second in 20 years. In 20 years' time, 30 years' time, does that mean that somebody's going to run 100 metres in less than 9 seconds?
I think human evolution says yeah, because everyone's getting taller and physically stronger. The food's supposedly getting better. Take fast food out of that equation.
And do you think that then is not necessarily because of the technology, and maybe 100 metres might be a bad example, but maybe the technology involved in that isn't as influential as diet, nutrition, training regimes, etc., etc.
Well, yeah, it's all part and parcel, isn't it? And I also think maybe the technology is making sport more a statistical event rather than being about 10 people running 100 meters. Now it's like, well, this person started and they were 0.6 of a slower than they were yesterday, and they need to do this meter by this meter and all that.
And it phases. So in the first third of the race, you were actually half a second slower than you were previously, whereas in the middle third, you were a second quicker or whatever. Yeah, and so therefore, is technology breaking it down to such an extent that it becomes very statistical, and it's not. What's the word I'm looking for? Not creative. It's almost too defined and there's no flair, there's no individuality.
I find athletics boring. I'll say that for start. But you hit upon a point that has fascinated me, and it is the 100 meters. In terms of, it is a finite distance. It's a finite amount of time that it's been running. So at some point, someone in the future, or maybe it's already happened, is going to run the 100 meters in the fastest time that it is physically possible to do it in. Yes, like we say, technology will improve that. Dietitians, if you're on your diet from age of 0 all the way through, we all know that Usain Bolt, fastest man on the planet, but he does like to party, God bless him. So maybe there will be someone faster than him, but he seems someone who's built pretty well to perform that task. At some point, there has to come, due to human physiology, due to science and everything, that you cannot move from A to B any faster than you are doing it in time X. It has to happen, but I don't know.
We don't know what that time is.
No, we don't.
Because taking Andy's point, we're getting bigger, faster, stronger, fitter.
I'm definitely getting bigger. Whatever. I'm not getting fitter.
Well, yeah, fatter, not fitter. Yeah, but because if you took it to, and this is going to sound stupid, and I'm just playing devil's advocate, if the advancement of running the 100 meters continues to evolve, at some point in the next 100 years, you're going to get somebody that can run the 100 meters in less than 8 seconds.
Well, who's the dude that did it? Was it Ed Moses at the risk of creating a controversy? He was the guy who did it, like, and it was he ended up breaking the world record, but then it was struck from the records because he was using like anabolic
We got Ben
steroids.
Johnson.
Was it Ben Johnson?
Yeah, Ed Moses was
sorry, Ed.
Peter Hurdler, who actually held the world record for fudging years, and he was literally unbeaten. I think he holds. Actually, I might be wrong now, and my sporting knowledge actually is not bad, but I might have got this stat wrong. I'm sure he held a world record for the most consecutive victories in a particular event, or he went unbeaten in the 400-meter hurdles for like, and I'm not 50 years or something stupid, like for a ridiculous amount of time. But it was Ben Johnson in the Seoul Olympics. He won the 100 meters.
Well, that's the thing, in terms of, all right, it might be banned, but it is still improving human physiology. So whether it should have been included or not, it's still a record. It's still a record time, isn't it? It's still running in that time. He
took anabolic steroids, which and Andy, you might take me up on this because you might know a little bit more about it than I do. But anabolic steroids, as far as I'm aware, they don't make you run faster per se. They just allow you to train better, longer, at more intensity. So he actually physically ran that 100 meters in that time. It's just that the drugs he was taking allowed him to train longer, harder, faster, stronger than the other guys that he was competing against. Is that right, Andy?
Yeah, exactly that. So your recovery time is less. Instead of training for, like, say, 10 minutes, you can go for an hour, something like. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's why it's banned in, like, bodybuilding and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, so they don't physically make, all of a sudden you don't get like go-go gadget legs, and so they don't make you run faster. They just allow you to train at a higher intensity, effectively. But I take your point, Ad. That human being has still run that distance in that time. Now, okay, with the use of some steroids that allowed him to train for that, but he's, as a human being, he's still run that distance in that time. So does that mean that, again, you take it to the nth degree, at some point in the future, someone's going to be able to run 100 meters in less than 5 seconds? Like, where does
has to end somewhere, doesn't it? It has to end somewhere, doesn't it?
Yeah. So, but where is that? And that's what. And is technology in sport shifting that time period sooner? Is it shifting it closer to what it is now because of the advancement in dietitians and nutritionists and everything else and everything that we know about it? And I don't know the answer. It's a very philosophical question. And actually, I know we normally do podcasts and we do a follow-up, but money in sport and it is a great one
I think so.
to talk about. So I'm sort of looking at time. We're sort of getting up close to time. Just my final thought. Technology in sport, and I love sport, and I love most sports. There isn't many sports that I won't watch. My final thought on this is, whilst I think the introduction of technology in sport is inevitable and was inevitable, I actually don't think I like it. And I actually really like going back to the early 90s, the 80s, and having a little bit of human say in it. Put it all on the referee. And you know what? If he makes a bad decision, he makes a bad decision. It evens itself out over a season. You know what, in cricket, if the umpire calls you out and you're in, you know what? It evens itself out over a career, sort of thing. So for me, I sort of get possibly why, because of the money that's now involved and the gains that are involved. But for me, I'd love to go back to a position where technology actually wasn't that heavily involved in sport. I don't know what your final thoughts are, guys. I don't know what your final thought is.
Yeah, I mean, we won't go back to that because the other side of it is, again, we're going to get onto the money side of it, I suppose. So I'll keep it brief. Is gambling inside of it as well, and like we talk about the statistics, you can bet on anything now. So the need for that to happen and the amount of money that generates for that to happen, it demands accuracy. But for me, it was a talking point. It was a talking point, and that was the whole point. Was that a goal? Was that the best goal you've ever seen? Was that the worst tackle you've ever seen?
Yeah.
That's what it was. It was talking points, and that for me is what sport should be about, and technology takes away from that.
Yeah, Andy.
Yeah, I like technology in sport. I think once they get it right, then it'll be better. Whether they would ever get it right,
Will they ever get it right to the point that you absolutely wholeheartedly accept that it's in sport?
When before VAR came into the Premier League, I was thinking, I hope it does, because it'll stop people like Salah getting away with these dodgy penalties. It's made it worse.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, we picked on him quite a lot, but
rightly so.
He does dive though.
Yeah, but it's not like a.
But
was it 50-50? It's like, no, he's blatantly gone flying.
I remember reading an article, and we've mentioned him already, and it's Ronaldo that mentioned it, and he said that when he was at United, Alex Ferguson, and bearing in mind this was pre-VAR, Alex Ferguson said to him, if you feel contact in the area, you fall down. And he said, what you do at that point is you're making the referee, and this goes back to what I was saying earlier about, this is what I would like to go back to. You're making the referee make a decision. And basically, Ferguson came out and tried to sort of defend him and say, when you're running at that speed with the ball at your feet, you feel a slight touch and it unbalances you and you fall over. I mean, that's a crock of shit. Basically, Ferguson told him, if you're in the box and you feel a contact, you fall over. I think nowadays Salah is genuinely, and Mane, and there are lots of others, but I'm an Evertonian, so I'll pick on the Liverpool players. So Mane and Salah are particularly bad at it. I think genuinely they're trying to con the referee. And unfortunately, because of technology, VAR will say, well, there was some contact, so therefore it's a penalty. Yeah. It was that contact enough for them to actually fall over there, when I suppose that's the crux. Was there contact? Probably yes. Was it enough for them to fall over? Probably no. But by the laws of the game, if there's contact in the box, it's a penalty, so therefore they're winning a penalty.
And I was going to say, on the flip side, you got like Jamie Vardy, who more than likely will try and stay on his feet to score a goal. But if he misses and the keeper saves it and it goes off a corner, more likely to give a corner than a penalty.
Yeah.
So say if like flat-footed Maguire came in and hacked him down, but then he carried on running and it went off a corner, they're not going to give a penalty, are they? That's the annoying thing.
There was a great example, and I can't for life remember what game it was, and it was a perfect example. And there was a striker running through on goal, and a defender came in and basically tried to scythe him down. And it wasn't Vardy, but I can imagine it being somebody like Vardy. And the defender came and tried to scythe him down, and he basically rode the tackle and then still tried to get a shot away, but sort of skewed it and it went to side netting or whatever. And had he have gone down and not taken his shot, it was an absolute stonewall penalty. Like, stonewall penalty.
You hear the commentators say that, I should have gone down under that challenge.
Yeah.
What, you should have been dishonest? Is that what you're saying? He should have been dishonest.
And you hear people saying that, he should have gone down. Well, he didn't, because the contact wasn't enough to send him down. And that's the problem that you've got, is that, but the laws of the game say if there's contact in the box and it's a penalty, blah, blah, blah. So, and again, I suppose, again, another whole different podcast is the laws of the game and football and so on. But so you're quite an advocate of technology then, Andy. It's just the implementation of that you want to get right in order for the sport to progress.
I think the ref should be, every game should have like 30 yellow cards, because there's people going down for no reason. There's a lot of dishonesty in the game. They're really I think they need to be tougher and just say, like, you mouth back to me, bang, yellow card straight away.
Totally.
It's just like, they just keep walking away, referees now, trying to calm it down. It's like, you need to stop these prima donnas. Like,
there was a very famous it was a game. It was a United game at Old Trafford. I can't remember who the referee was, and you got Stam, you got Ricky, and you got various people effectively running after the referee. And I remember it vividly. And actually, all it needs, and it needs the FA or UEFA or FIFA or whoever it may be, to take a firm standpoint. And for 1 or 2 weekends, you would have crazy games, and you'd end up with like 9 versus 8 or 10 versus 9 or whatever it may be. But basically, if I'm the referee and you run at me and you're effing and jeffing, I say to you, right, Andy, you've sworn at me. If you swear at me again, I will issue you the yellow card for fouling abusive language. If you swear at me again, I issue you a yellow card. If you then continue to swear at me, I turn around and say, I've warned you, I've given you a yellow card, I'm now dismissing you from the pitch for fouling abusive language. Off you go. Now, 3 of your teammates will come running in, giving me absolutely both barrels. And I turn around and go, Adam, you've just sworn at me, that's fouling abusive language, that's a yellow card. That's a yellow card. That's a yellow card. And if you continue to swear at me, I will send you off. Now, if you swear at me again, I send you off. Now, at some point, the manager is going to go, lads, keep your fudgy mouth shut. You know what I mean? At which point the ref goes over to the manager, says foul abusive language. But the manager says, keep your mouth shut because you're going to get sent off. Now, there's no point fining these clubs. There's no point fining them because the money nowadays doesn't matter. However, if all of a sudden 4 of your players or 3 of your players have had red cards, they're missing for the next 3 games or 4 games. 100%. That means that you've then got to bring in your second string or your kids or whatever. That impacts your position in the league. That impacts the financial money that you're going to get at the end of it. Blah, 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 blah. And all it needs is you'll get 1 or 2 crazy weekends with loads of red cards. But at some point, the manager's going to go, lads, just keep your mouth shut. Literally, it's as simple as that. Just keep your mouth shut. Because we can't afford for you to be banned for 3 games or 4 games or whatever it may be. And so that's a whole different aside, and that was a bit of a final sort of left turn. But I think there's a couple of follow-ups we could do to this episode. I think I like Adam's money in sport sort of sponsorship. I do like that as a concept. So that might be something that we look forward to. Guys, it's been interesting. We're obviously up to the sort of just over the hour mark, I think now maybe. So we're going to wrap it up. I've enjoyed hosting this one. A couple of interesting thoughts. I didn't expect one to go pro technology and one to go against with Adam and Andy, but it's certainly food for thought in terms of the sports that we love and whether or not we continue to see the development of technology and whether or not certain governing bodies will dial it back. But Adam, if you want to say your sort of goodbyes and final thoughts.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed this one. We chatted at the start and we wondered how much content we had, and as it turns out, we've got enough. Well, we've gone over the hour mark and could have gone on for another hour or 2, I suspect. I'd like to shout out just to say thank you very much to the Philippines for being country number 29. We said we we're going to do something for number 30. We don't know what yet. But again, thank you to Poland, number 39 in their charts. And thank you to New Zealand again, because we're back in the charts in New Zealand at number 202. Yeah, it's a little bit further down, but I'll take it. I'm okay with that. So yeah, thank you to everyone for listening, whether it's Poland, New Zealand, the Philippines, or wherever you are. Just thank you. And thank you from me, and I'm sure that's on behalf of the other 2 guys as well.
Absolutely. Andy, do you want to say your goodbyes?
Yeah, it's a good one. It reminds me of how much of a stickler I am for rules. We'll talk about that on the next one. But it's good. And thanks for all the new and old listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I know we keep mentioning this sort of the new countries, but just a shout out to all those people in all the old countries that are still listening to us and downloading us and whatever. So thank you very much, and long may it continue. Loved hosting this one. Opened up a couple of potential new podcasts for us. So until the next time. Gaz out. See you later, guys.